Good morning. I'm Shelley Wilkes, the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Social Responsibility with the Orlando Magic. Thank you so much for joining us here virtually for the second day of our inaugural Women's Empowerment and Leadership Summit presented by Zymoprint. Yesterday, we heard amazing insights from our keynote speaker, Katrina Adams, along with female leaders who have shattered the glass in their respective fields. If you were unable to join us yesterday, you can watch yesterday's sessions now on the Orlando Magic YouTube page. We are excited to continue the conversation today with two great panels of incredible female leaders. Our first panel, the Empower Her panel, features executives from our Orlando Magic global partners across multiple industries. We will hear their leadership lessons, the importance of mentorship and providing inspiration for other leaders and future leaders. Please welcome back Monica May, founder of Let's Spill the Tea and owner of Monica May Communications, to introduce today's first panel.
Well, good morning and thank you for being here again today. Listen, as we wind up Women's History Month, I can't think of a better place to be, because you better get some note paper out because you're going to need it today again. We've got a phenomenal panel put together for you for Empower Her. And we're going to start by introducing our panelists, Lynn Fernando Mulvihill. She's the head of partnerships, marketing, and at Disney Parks, experiences and products, global marketing executive with 15 years of experience. She has her MBA from the Michigan Ross School of Business and her bachelor's in psychology and communications from Michigan. She's a mom of two boys. We have two Carries today. Carrie Scalara, we're going to just use their last names as we move forward, is the director of sports marketing for Michelob Ultra. She's responsible for overseeing the sports strategy, the partnerships, and talent for the brand. She was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 and Sports Business Journal New Voices 30 Under 30. Yes, that's the first Carrie. The second, Carrie Lockett, is the Senior Sports Marketing Manager for Gatorade. She oversees individual team, athlete, and league partnerships across MLB, across NBA, WNBA, and the G League. She graduated from the University of Illinois. She was a softball player there, and her MBA is from Notre Dame. She sits on the company's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, addressing the issue of systemic racism for the brand. Crystal Peck is the Senior Director of Human Resources for L3Harris. She started as HR generalist at an aircraft company in Connecticut, and she is with us today as well. And I'm so happy to be here, just kind of interweaving this conversation. So we just want to say thank you so much for joining us virtually, the second part of our inaugural Women's Empowerment conversation. So we're excited to continue our conversation today. We're going to start with Lockett. Carrie Lockett, that is. I do want to remind you about Slido. We're going to start off with some questions for our panelists, but we want you to join in as well. And you can do this by scanning the QR code that's on your screen right now, or you can visit slido.com, that is SLIDO.com, and enter the event code, which is hashtag GameChangeHers, not hers, but hers, all right? Carrie Lockett, over the past year, we have all seen our lives change in multiple areas. As someone who works on league partnerships across multiple sports, your team saw the need to pivot consistently. What does it take to be a leader who leads through that type of change?
Yeah, thanks, Monica. And first, I'd like to say that I am just fired up to be here today on this panel with such inspirational ladies. Girl, I got my notebook ready to go. I can't wait to learn from all of you. But yeah, I mean, we could have a separate panel on this topic alone, I think. But yes, as someone that works across multiple sports with different leagues and teams and athletes, you know, what I can say for certain is that the only certainty is change. And yes, last year was unprecedented, and wow, how many times have we heard that word? But it truly was. I mean, policies, procedures, dynamics were changing weekly, daily, I mean, sometimes even hourly. You know, so I'd say from a leadership perspective, I think some of the very core leadership principles apply in any situation that involves change. And I'll say this too, even if you're not on a senior leadership team, or even if you don't have direct reports, you are a leader in situations of change as well. But first I'd say is confidence. In particular, when you're leading through darkness and it kind of appears as if no one can see more than 2 feet ahead of you, and you can't even really see that far out yourself, it's really important to remain confident in those situations. And it's kind of like flying, right? I don't know about all you, but I'm on a plane all the time, and I still cannot get used to turbulence. And, when it gets bad, I glance over at the flight attendants, and if they're chill, then okay, I can take a deep breath and relax. So as a leader in a new situation, eyeballs are on you to see, really kind of how you react. And I think it's important to really establish a clear vision and a game plan. And it's crucial that everyone is on the same page, and that's why I think it really boils down to communication. Communicating that game plan and ensuring that your communication is clear so that everyone is on board and inspired. And part of communication, of course, is listening. And, as women, we do that really well, understanding, what the challenges are, what the pushback is, but from my perspective, I would say that challenge equals opportunity. And if you can get on board with that mindset, and if you can get your team on board with that mindset, then you're just setting yourself up for success. And then, of course, be ready to change course, because it's just going to happen all over again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But I love the way you said communicate clearly so everybody understands, and keep your game face on, because people are watching you and they'll respond to how you look and how you're responding and the tone of your voice even.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Carrie. Lynn, how have you seen the lines of business and personal life blur as people are now going on a year of working from home?
Yes, wow, Monica. Great question. And first of all, just honored and privileged to be a part of this great panel. Have learned so much. And honestly, when I think about this question and the fact that it has been over a year of going from home, everyone in the workforce has been exposed professionally and personally in a way that they never thought that they would be. And I think, it has actually brought a lot of blessings in disguise. People are now seeing you as a normal person. And to the point that Carrie made, everyone is a leader. So you're always out there now on these Zooms, people see you. And it creates like a little bit of a vulnerability. You're on Zooms and on calls all day. But I think that that's the blessing in disguise. People see you in your everyday lives. They see you walking your dog, taking care of your kids throughout the day on Zoom, having delivery people, couch delivery. Like, I've seen it all, honestly. And I think it provides an opportunity for closer connection. And it actually inspires and hopefully it motivates everyone at all levels to be more thoughtful, more flexible in their communication styles. But that goes back to what Carrie was saying. It inspires confidence. People on my team are saying all the time, like, wow, I don't know how you do it. And it's like, you just got to do it. And I think that it also inspires a reliance on each other in a way that I'd never have thought. I rely on my manager and my colleagues even more than ever. When I see them struggling throughout the day with their kids on Zoom or with other issues, it's like, I've got you. Like, don't even worry about it. And I think it creates that humanity and that like personal connection that I think was lacking before we became, remote. The other part is, there's this whole notion of work-life integration. Like, forget work-life balance. Time for work is now spread out over the day. I know I wake up early for calls. I'll start the kids for Zoom, Zoom school at 8 o'clock. And it's like, I block my calendar and I know that's like, guys, if I'm not answering your calls, it's because I'm doing this. Or, my boss, she's walking her dogs throughout the day. And actually that becomes the norm. And we become more accepting and more just empathetic to all of it. And so those personal lines that have been blurred, I think are huge blessings. And that work-life integration, when we return, to normalcy, to those pre-COVID days and pre-remote working days, I think there's going to be more of that openness to that work-life integration. And there's going to be there's going to be more of that lack of asking for permission. Like, hey, can I go do this? Or can I leave early for work? It's like, just get your job done and know that, people are going to be responsible and they're going to actually be more accountable to getting the work done. And I think, honestly, those lines of business and personal life from this last year have just actually hopefully created more productivity, more innovation, and again, more like collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lynn. I like that work-life integration had replaced that work-life balance, because we talked about that yesterday, and how men don't even speak work-life balance. They just do it. And so we've taken on that kind of an attitude. And I love your chair too. Thank you. That's really cool. Thank you so much, Lynn. Scalara, as in Carrie, all right, we'll go to you. Before taking on your role at Anheuser-Busch, you were Director of Activation at Ultimate Fight Championship, that's UFC. Can you share a little bit about your experience and how you were able to thrive in an environment that is traditionally male-dominated? This is going to be interesting.
I sure can. First, I'd be remiss if I didn't say what an honor to be here with you guys today. I feel like I'm a part of a huge hype girl squad. I love it. So I'm looking forward to today. But, my experience at UFC was very interesting. I started out, the job came to me. They wanted me to check out a fight. I went to go see the fight. I played soccer in college at University of Pennsylvania. Fighting was not in my repertoire. I went and checked out the experience at Barclays Center 5 years ago, I think now. And I was like, can I actually do this? And you see 2 men and 2 women also go in the octagon and they beat the actual you-know-what out of each other. I'm like, can I actually do this thing? But what I saw is, it wasn't a woman or a male thing when I took the position with UFC. I made it be a carry thing. And what I did with that is I made sure that I was prepared for each and every opportunity that I went into. So before I started overseeing the activation team, I started out in a sales position with UFC. If you think about it from a women perspective, selling sponsorships is fewer and far between from a woman to male side. So what I did with that is, again, not going back to the gender thing, but making sure that I was prepared for each and every single opportunity, every pitch that I was a part of. Maybe that's, the D1 athlete in me always pushing myself and making sure that people were prepared to be in all of my meetings and opportunities I had. But that was a big thing that I made sure. And with that, the community and the professionals that I was surrounded by at UFC, because I was a woman, they wanted me to excel. They wanted me to do well. So I was always, if I made sure that I was doing what I needed to do to prepare myself at the end of the day, and I was putting myself in key positions for success, that hopefully, the recognition and the success would follow. And separately outside, always, throughout the careers that I've had to date, is I've looked into aspiring female leaders to get their advice and to get their mentorship for, what experiences have you been through and what challenges have you faced when being a woman in sports? We are few and far between within our professional careers, and asking them for advice and leadership, which has certainly been helpful, with all the experiences that I've been in to date.
You said something, Carrie, that really hit me. You said my job came to me. That's pretty, just showing up as who you are. People see that. And then when they're looking, they know exactly where to find you. She said her job came to her. So you didn't know anything about that going into that arena. That's like Cynthia. Cynthia came out of corporate America before going into the Mavericks. And job came to her. I love it. We're going to talk more about that. Thank you very much, Carrie Scalara. Crystal Peck, let's come to you now. As an HR leader at L3Harris, how do you identify leaders in your organization? What are the characteristics of future leaders that you look for when you're recruiting for your organization?
Thanks, Monica. And as the other ladies have said, what a great event. It's so unlikely for me to be here amongst, some of the leaders that are on this call, just given our industry and us being in the defense space. And all of the ladies actually touched on a few points that were sort of critical as you think about what it means to lead, right? A leader back in 2019 does not look the same as what's required of a leader today, right? You used to be able to walk around the corner your direct report might be sitting right there, and you may be able to collaborate and have conversations very easily. And now you're having to make sure that you're making connections virtually. In some cases, like I've built a team in many cases virtually with people who have never even been in the office. So how do you lead people who really don't know what the culture is like in person, but you need to onboard them? And, it's what Lynn shared too, in terms of really understanding what it means to have emotional leadership, right? IQ is one thing, EQ is another. And it's important that as a leader, you're able to completely understand the dynamics of your team. Now there's the added element of folks working from home, understanding their boundaries and their limitations, and really figuring out how you can lead and help them be successful in that environment. And then I would add one other thing to that, which is this element of courageous leadership, right? Over the last year, there's been a lot of turmoil in this country around COVID, around systemic racism, among other things. And as leaders, we have to be able to have those difficult conversations. We may not always have the right things to say, but we need to be willing to engage in those discussions, engage our teams, engage our employees, so that they feel like you're hearing and understanding the things that are important to them. For me, it was impactful to have my leaders say, hey, how are you feeling? And no, I don't want the canned answer. I want you to tell me, how are you really feeling? And that goes a long way in really feeling like I can be my whole self at work. And so those are some of the things that, as I look for leaders going forward, those are the type of leaders that I think are important for us to have in our organization here at L3 Harris.
I like that. No candy here. Just come on and be yourself. Thank you, Crystal. That's important. Leaders have to be able to have those difficult conversations. Thank you. Carrie Lockett, as a female leader, what has been the most significant barrier in your career?
Great question. First, I have to say, honestly, I've been very fortunate in my career in that in my journey, I have not faced many traditional barriers. And, I attribute much of that to the female trailblazers who came before us, the firsts, the ones that carved out that path and made it so that all of us women in sports are afforded the opportunities that we have today. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of work to be done. And equity is so far from 100%, and especially if you look at the C-suite level, it's just not there yet. But I will say from a barriers perspective that probably my biggest barrier, oftentimes to be completely honest, is myself in some ways. And what I mean by that is that as women, we sort of have this tendency to have these self-limiting beliefs, certainly more than men. We tend to sometimes lack confidence or feel like maybe we don't belong at that table or we don't have a voice at that table. And what I would say to that, to anyone else who maybe thinks that way or to myself, is just get out of your own way. You can do it. You will do it. You've done it before. You'll do it again. And I think it's just making sure that you're able to stay connected to that growth mindset and getting comfortable being uncomfortable, because really, that's the only way that we grow. We cannot afford to allow ourselves that kind of thinking. I think about if I'm on a treadmill, for example, this is probably another bad example, but if I'm telling myself that I think I'm tired or I want to slow down, I'm just going to speed up, because one, I'm not allowed to think that way. And two, I need to prove to myself the fact that I don't actually need to slow down and it is all in my head. So, at the end of the day, just show up. Even if it's uncomfortable or you don't think you can, prove yourself wrong, build that confidence. The important point is that you cannot listen to yourself if you're the one saying that you can't.
Carrie, we talked so much about that yesterday, and it boils down to this tape that is rolling 24/7 in our head. But we have to reverse that tape, and we have to inject it with positivity, because the negativity is certainly going to try to outweigh it. So just keep that tape in going in reverse and just hear yourself, but over hear yourself, and just know where it's coming from. That is so true, Carrie. Thank you very much. Hey, Lynn, what are the most important attributes of successful leaders today, especially in a time where employees and businesses are experiencing more unique challenges?
Great question, and I have to hand it to Crystal. She definitely touched on it. The most important attribute, I think, is a high emotional intelligence. Forget IQ; it's all about the EQ, and especially when there's so much change going on, so much volatility, so much uncertainty at every level, should have and attain that high emotional intelligence, and that includes being empathetic. Being a servant leader, honestly, thinking about being transparent and also showing their vulnerability. When you have emotional intelligence, it helps the obvious things: increase, team performance, decision making. It decreases stress. It hopefully decreases staff turnover and inspires in people the ability to just roll up their sleeves and get it done in spite of the adversity, in spite of the uncertainty. And I think, a successful leader also just helps their team feel secure. Even, when there's no playbook, right, to the point that Carrie made, there's really no answers, there's really no way to go about just the next 2 months. Creating that safe, trusted environment helps connect people on that emotional level. And it's a huge responsibility, being vulnerable, letting your team know, I don't have all the answers, I'm in the same situation as you're in. It actually inspires them to become more, focused, more motivated. Everyone wants to get the work done. And I think, that with that emotional intelligence, it's kind of like being a parent or being a coach. You're creating opportunities, you're helping them with their first steps, that you're giving them the education and confidence so that they can achieve more than you have for yourself. And I think, in these times that we've been in and these unique challenges, I think that emotional intelligence is the thing that you have to call on probably the most.
You know what? Thank you, Lynn. And stay right there with you for just a second. You and Crystal have talked about IQ versus EQ. How do you go from just relying on IQ to really pivoting to really rely more on the EQ, the emotional side of it? How do you do that?
Yeah, I'll hand it over to Crystal, but my one thing is, honestly, it's understanding each individual person's ways that make them, tick, what makes them happy, what makes them motivated, what makes them sad. You have to get to know everyone on your team and who you work with individually, because I think it's just like IQ, but you're connecting with them on an emotional level. And I think when you have that EQ with your team and who you work with, you can do anything. You can inspire, you can get work done, you can collaborate, you can partner at all different levels.
Mm-hmm. Crystal, jump in on that.
I think what Lynn said is very well said. The one thing I would add is surround yourself with people who don't look and think like you and who will challenge you, right? Hire for your blind spots. If you don't have people in your corner that can call you out, or as we like to say now, call you in and let you know, when you're maybe not being an empathetic leader, or you're not being fair, you're not being balanced, or you're not giving enough of yourself to the team, then you're not going to be successful as a leader. So I always think it's important to just surround yourself with people that, have different perspectives.
That's so cool.
Hey, Monica, can I jump in on that too?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast recently about Pat Summitt, and I can't quote it specifically, but it's talking about how, if you can really, really get people to know that you truly care about them, that is true leadership. And that's when they'll do anything for you. And I just think that plays into the whole EQ and empathetic leadership that we've been talking about.
So true. So very true. Thank you very much, Carrie. Scalara.
I'm back.
Yeah, you ready? As a lot of young people start to find success in their careers and start to take on leadership roles, many feel this type of what's called imposter syndrome, this creeping feeling that you're an imposter and don't deserve a big opportunity or title, or who are you to have this type of responsibility. As you were starting out and taking on new roles, is this something that you ever dealt with? Did you ever feel that way? And what advice can you give to combat this?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Monica. First thing that I want to say to this is never apologize for your success. That's one thing, like as women, as especially not. And so every position that I found myself in, I have to remind myself, even, you know, if I feel not as confident stepping into a different meeting or something, there is a reason why I'm there. There was a reason why I was hired for that role. And, you know, the bosses and the leadership that have taken me on have recognized those skills and those assets that I bring to the table. And, you know, with that too, it's just a matter of finding that confidence and recognizing that your skills to date, your career to date has put you in that position. I like to think that everything happens for a reason. As I found myself in my career trajectory to date with my roles with Fox Sports, now at Anheuser-Busch, there's a reason why I'm in this position. Whether people, you know, looking to me to recognize that I should be in this role, but it's a matter of finding that confidence and knowing that what you're doing matters. And I think a bit to this too is that something that we all forget is that every leadership position that I've taken and that I've been in is that I take a humanistic approach to it. It's okay to not always know the answers to something. It's okay to be learning. That's what makes the world go round. That's why we're still growing and aspiring in our professions to be. So, and I feel as though, you know, that human approach that I take in the leadership roles I have builds trust with my colleagues, because I'm not walking in acting like I know and run the show. I have experience today. I know what I'm working with, but I'm not afraid to learn and say that I don't know something and to latch on to others to learn from their experience and their mentorship as well. But that'd be my advice. Net, number one, don't apologize for your success. Like, you go get them, girls. And secondly is look to your mentors around you for, you know, for any advice that they have, and take a humanistic approach to it all. It's okay to not know everything.
Thank you, Carrie. Lynn, you're nodding your head a lot. Can you jump in on that sometimes thinking, feeling like, ooh, I may not be the one for this, but you do it anyway. How do you manage that?
You know, I think it's funny. I was talking to someone about why women apologize so much. And sometimes it's apologizing for our success, it's apologizing for that promotion, and it's like, you know, sorry guys, you're our allies, but you never apologize for your success. When you get that promotion, you're like, well deserved. Mm-hmm. But I've been so fortunate over the last, you know, several years to hand out promotions and to honestly be growing, you know, female leaders, future leaders. And yeah, I think, Carrie, you're right about, you know, don't ever apologize for success. Own it. I've been put in positions where I've been out of my own element, and it's like, all right, let's get it done. Like, I don't know what to do, but we'll figure it out. And I do think, as I was a younger leader, I definitely apologized for my success. I, you know, definitely felt like I was out of my element, but I do think as I've matured and had the mentorship and other leaders tell me that same advice, it's like, okay, I'm in this role for a reason, and someone believed in me and I have the potential. And I don't think, you know, at any level we should apologize for success, but men never do either. So it's a funny thing to think about as females and as women leaders.
Thank you.
Nodding.
Anybody else want to jump in on that one? Because we all have struggled with that. As we move up the ladder, we all have struggled with that. Carrie, what do you say to that imposter syndrome feeling? Lock it.
Yeah, no, I said it before. You got to be you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable and get out of your own way. You know, I said it before, but you know, just making sure that you're able to kind of stay connected to that growth mindset. And then I really think that it sort of sets us up for success. But a lot of people have talked about mentorship too. I think mentors are critical in anyone's career and at any point in your journey. I think it's really important that we turn to our mentors, and they can help us, give us that different perspective that we may not have sort of thought to think about it that way, and they can guide us and give us insight into their own experiences. So yeah, I mean, I think it just all comes down to getting out of your own way. Don't hold yourself back.
There you are. Get out of your own way. I want to jump over to Slido for just a moment. And this one is anonymously sent. What have you done during the pandemic and working from home to keep your passion / your dedication when you're lacking the in-person conversations and interactions? Does anybody want to take a stab at that? Lockett, you go.
No, that is a great question. My head is spinning too because it's hard. I mean, so much of what we do, or at least what I do, is like in-person relationships. So I know we do all have Zoom fatigue to a certain degree, but it has been great, having some more face-to-face time with some of the partners that we've had. And we've done a really good job as a team, doing team events and getting together as a team. And I think it's really trying to tap into that inspiration and sort of remind ourselves day in and day out, if I have this G, if I'm wearing this G on my shirt, to be proud of it, right? And, it's not easy when you sort of lose that connectivity and that passion. But another thing, and I think someone touched on it earlier, is the work-life balance, right? Making sure that you do maintain that sense of work-life balance and find that opportunity to sort of like shut it off at times too, because then you kind of come back more refreshed and more engaged and ready to sort of just get after it.
Mm-hmm. And we're calling it work-life integration.
Integration, yes.
Yeah, no more balance.
No more balance.
Whatever. Another one from an anonymous sender on Slido, and this is for anyone. Is there anything that your company is doing specifically that you think has helped women or people of color grow in their careers? And I think I want to head that one over to Crystal.
That one was coming to me. There's a lot of things that we're doing, but I think what I want to highlight the most is just how deliberate we are being about how we hire, how we retain, how we develop, right? And I think, one of my leaders said something, several months back that really resonated, and it was, if we are not truly deliberate about the decisions that we're making, and I'm not saying that we're hiring people because they're people of color or they're women, but if you're not ensuring that your panel of interviewers are diverse, if you're not ensuring that you have diverse slating so that your slate is even representative of the populations in which we live and serve, then you're not really ever going to move the needle. And so for me, it's always about driving that accountability, right? As a female person of color, when I'm interviewing for a company, I want to see somebody that looks like me. I want to see somebody that I could look to and have a conversation and say, hey, sister girl, how has it been for you? Or growing in an organization of this size, what are some of the challenges? How have you overcome it? And I think it's important that we have, leadership teams that are representative of our population and the people that we want to recruit. And so I would say just being really deliberate about those small steps, and they will eventually lead to you having an inclusive, leadership team and an inclusive employee population.
Thank you very much. And Crystal, stay right there. You're in a very unique industry of aerospace and defense technology. What made you interested in this career path, and how have you advanced in your career over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is a unique industry. It's a fun industry. It's very interesting. I actually fell into it. So I grew up kind of 8 minutes from a big defense contractor in Connecticut, and it's just a huge, huge facility with a huge presence, and everybody kind of knows somebody who kind of works there in the community, and really wanted to do more HR generalist work, and they really at that time had what I would have considered like an entry level sort of generalist opportunity, and so I applied. And it really is responsible largely for where I am today. I had the opportunity to do so many different things, in multiple different states. I moved for the company, and really just anything that I wanted to get into from an HR perspective, they gave me the opportunity to kind of learn it. And if I was asked to do something, I rarely, if ever, said no, if I felt like it was, in the best interest of myself and the company. And so really was able to be successful there. And I've gone out of the industry and have come right back because I'm just so passionate about our mission and the things that we do. But honestly, I fell into it. I never set out, I never left school to end up in, defense and aerospace, but it's been a really worthwhile career.
Wow, you rocking it as well. You do.
Thank you.
You do. I'm going to direct this question to Scalora. What is a failure that you have experienced that, looking back, actually helped you in your career?
Great question.
Made you think, huh?
It totally did. All right, let me see here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. There was when I was working with Major League Soccer, actually Fox Sports. When I started with Fox Sports, that was my first gig in sports. And I was kind of looking for the next step. I was getting my master's at Columbia University at the time. I was doing a little bit of both. And I really, really wanted to work for the NBA. I was set on the NBA. I was like, this is going to be where I work. And whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to make it happen. A non-starter. So I applied to a couple positions. And I remember there was 2 positions that I applied to, probably within like a 6-month span, where I was the candidate to the final round always. And then it was like, I was so close, and then it was like, and then it happened again, and I was so close, and then I was like, So I remember I bought a pair of shoes that day to make myself feel better, and I was like, these are I'm not getting hired shoes by the NBA. But now I looking back at it, I use that for motivation. And what I did is I learned from those 2 experiences that I had. And I realized, again, not the right place, not the right time. The universe was not calling me to the NBA for those positions. And then Major League Soccer came into the fold. Being a soccer player at Penn, that was my sport at the end of the day. So then I came into that opportunity. And, if I didn't get shut down by the NBA twice, I'm not holding any grudges. I wouldn't have had that position at MLS, where I learned and met so many fantastic people, and really found my footing in the partnership space. So that was definitely one of those mentors. It kind of but now, in the position that I'm at with Anheuser-Busch and Michelob Ultra, I oversee everything that we do with the NBA, the WNBA. So it's funny that you look
Look at you now.
Exactly. You turn around and I'm like, hey guys, I'm working with you now. What was the beef back in the day?
Right.
But everything has all worked out well. And, that was one of the times where I look back, and it was that motivation that just pushed me to do better, it wasn't the right place at the right time. And I used that as finding my next gig. And that's what landed me at Major League Soccer.
That is such a cool story. Lynn, you want to take a stab at that one too?
I mean, it's probably in the same vein, same theme. I've had definitely those aspirations, those brands, those big jobs that I've always wanted and aspired to be in. And, early in my career, I was in advertising, and there was, a lot of those, big agencies and big jobs and accounts that in many ways, I aspired to go into. And I think there was a couple times where, I thought I had it in the bag. I thought like that role, that next promotion, that next level, I had it. And to the point that Carrie made, it wasn't for me. It wasn't the opportunity. The time wasn't there. And, sometimes, things happen for a reason, right? And I think you have to be open to what the universe wants, where you need to be in your life at that point. Had it not been, honestly, one rejection after the other, I wouldn't have been able to build my career at Disney, because I thought I was on the trajectory of literally just living and being in the advertising world. I wanted to head up and be the group account, just be the top wig at like a big agency. And I kept getting rejected. And it was like, you know what? Maybe I need to go to client side. Maybe I need to explore effectively doing what I do within an agency at Disney. And so, long story short, you have to be open, you have to be flexible, you have to know that sometimes, though you may have it all on paper, you have the credentials, you have the resume, there's honestly a path that's already probably set for you. And I've now been at Disney over 12 years, had multiple careers, multiple roles, leadership roles, but I thought I was set in advertising for so long. And those rejections early in my career actually diverted me into a totally different path. And honestly, to the point Carrie made, just I'm happy. I'm so excited that those failures actually shaped me and helped me into this new path and this new career. Or not new anymore, but
don't be afraid of failure then. Yeah. Carrie, go ahead.
Well, Monica, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, between Lynn and Carrie, I mean, every single one of us on this panel, probably every single one listening in, has had failures, right? And I think that that's just the key thematic there, is that you're going to overcome them and you're going to learn from them and you're going to only become stronger and better because of them, which is fantastic. And that's not just an athlete mindset, but I think like the thing to take away from that is, okay, if you get knocked down, just get back up and keep going and maybe go harder, right? And it's all going to work out. Like Carrie said, it really all does work out. And you're, you know, what's meant to happen will happen. Your job will find you.
Mm-hmm. Here's another one from, and thank you, Lockett. Another one from an anonymous Slido person. What role does your faith play in fortifying your confidence and resolve? Anybody?
I'll answer that one. So the question was your faith?
Yeah. What role does your faith play in your confidence and resolve?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm a person of faith. And so, you know, I generally will start each week or each day with, you know, either prayer or positive affirmation. And I end the day with the same. And just the ability to give it all away at the end of the day and knowing that whatever you believe in or whatever force or no force at all, that each day is going to be what it is, and you can't continue to beat yourself up if you had a bad day, you know, and just the ability to just, even around the things that we talked about, right? If there is a failure, just knowing that today is what it is, and tomorrow's a new day, and the ability to start over.
Mm-hmm. I think that this question right here is really going to help somebody. We talked about failure and turning it around, but this person was part of a major or massive layoff, and they're trying to transition their career and are experiencing so much rejection. Does anybody else want to give this person some encouragement about overcoming rejection?
Yeah, for sure. I'll chime in first. You know, that stinks. That's one of the, just to start with that, you know, the pandemic has put us all in these super challenging positions that we really have to persevere and work to get through. What I would say is that every position that I found myself in right now has been relationships based. It has been all about finding connections with people and having those one-to-one interactions with them, learning from them, and also introducing myself so that when a position pops up, that, you know, Carrie Scalora is top of mind for them. And with that, people now, as in myself, and I'm sure all these fabulous women on this panel, want to give back. I want to help people because people have helped me be in the roles that I have found myself in. And so have confidence in that there are good people out there that want to connect with you, that want to connect the dots and introduce you on to others that you can meet and, you know, share your resume with, share your skills with. I get so many emails from people reaching out to me. If I don't email them back right away, I will, because of the fact that I used to be in those shoes. I still will be in those shoes. We all will be in those shoes. It's very much relationships based. It's about knowing the good in people that they want to help you because they've also been helped. So know that at your core deep inside and keep reaching out to people. Like, please send me a LinkedIn after this conversation and I am happy to connect you with anyone in my network and let's chat. But know that they're as good to people and they want to give back and keep pushing through, even though it's a challenging time. It'll make you stronger at the end of the day. It's annoying, but you'll find your footing soon enough, I'm sure.
That was really, really, really heartfelt. And thank you, Scalora. Anybody else want to give them some? Yeah.
I just want to add one little thing to that, because I think the other thing to add is your energy and the frequency to which you're putting your energy and your intention. What you put out will come back. And honestly, the rejection stinks. You know, every time you get kicked down, you're like, oh, this is the worst. But I think when you pick back up and you recognize that, again, it's not you. The climate is just so difficult right now to get into roles, and especially as you get higher up the ladder. So I do think be intentional, honestly, I think, Crystal, be deliberate. Like that frequency, that energy that you put out there, that vibration, it will come back to you. And every rejection, use it, get your shoes, get your, do what you need to do to make sure that every rejection actually brings you to the next level, because I do think people see that energy and they know it's a hard time out there to hire. So make sure you're intentional and deliberate and just keep putting that vibration and that energy out as you're thinking about every role, every opportunity, and every interview.
Thank you, Lynn. And just don't give up. Don't give up. Every day set out to make sure that you connect with one more person, and it's going to come to you. Crystal, I wanted to ask you this. This is from Slido as well. What in your skill set do you think has made you so successful in your career?
That's a great question. So here comes the imposter syndrome, right? Because I'm ready to give credit away, right? But I will start by saying I do think there's a lot about me that does make me unique. I think I come from a diverse perspective. I came here from Jamaica as a 5-year-old. So immigrant parents who I had to watch work really hard. Before my mom became a nurse, she actually used to clean houses to send me to private school. And so just very unique experiences, I think, have really shaped my perspective, my view on a lot of things. It has also made me pretty fearless when it comes to kind of speaking my mind. But here's where I was, going to start with the imposter syndrome and give it away. I would like to think that it's me that's gotten me where I am, but I think it's a lot of the leaders that I've had the opportunity to work with and support who were deliberate, including my leader now. She's not able to watch, but I'm sure she will watch, who has been very deliberate about, making sure that as she's climbing the ladder, that she's pulling up others with her, and that she's valuing diverse perspectives. And so, I think there's a lot about me that certainly, has helped me to reach the level of success, but it's so much more to do with the people that I've had the opportunity to surround myself. And as Carrie said, I'm making sure that as I'm climbing the ladder, that I'm also doing the same. I'm reaching back and pulling up others with me. And I think that's so important.
Mm-hmm. Carrie Lockett, you want to, whenever I see you shake your head, I'm putting you back in the game, okay?
I'm bench ready. I'm ready to go, Monica.
Oh,
I think that, coming from like an athlete mentality, it's kind of put it all out on the field, put it all out there, and sort of never, ever, ever give up. And I think that from my perspective, like, I look back on, my motivation, and I come from a household where I had a single parent, and my mother kind of was, took it all on her shoulders, and I kind of looked at that and like used that as sort of my inspiration and my fuel. So, I kind of always tap back into that, but, I think the thing that maybe has made me most successful is just having that never give up mentality, being humble. I definitely think you have to be humble. You need to be appreciative for the wins along the way. And, I think everyone has said it, but you have to give back. And, it comes back around. And as Carrie was saying, like reach out on LinkedIn, and we'll put you in touch with our network. And we've been there before, and we'll be there again, but you got to give back as well along the way.
I like that, Lockett. With our last 3 minutes, there's a question that we asked everyone yesterday, and I want to do it briefly with you ladies. What advice, Scalora, would you give your younger self?
Great question. And the advice that I'm going to give is something that every person always has shared with me in my reviews, and I hate them for, was to have patience and don't put so much pressure on yourself. Mm-hmm. I think people say it's a stereotype of millennials. We're always aspiring for the next role. Once we find ourselves comfortable, we're pushing the envelope for more. And it's just to kind of take a deep breath and like everything will come in due time. I know when I was first starting out in sports, I was like a mile a minute. I was working too fast. I was, just pushing for the next thing when I wasn't yet just taking in what was happening around me. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself for that. And it's just, having that patience and that everything will happen in due time. And don't put so much pressure on yourself. Honestly, I still think we all need to remind ourselves of that. At the end of the day, I think, at AB, I'm in meetings back to back to back all day long. And I have to recognize that it's just marketing. It's just sports. Like it's okay if, you get frustrated, you work yourself up, like just remove yourself from it and just take a deep breath and relax. Like we're not curing cancer. I always have to like remind myself of that at the end of the day because I get so worked up. But yeah, definitely to my younger self is just breathe, patience, and everything will come in due time.
Thank you so much, Scalara. Lynn, I'm going to give you the last word on this one. What would you tell your younger self?
Wow, I get the last word. So I always say YOLO. You only live once. It's okay if you don't know what you're supposed to do in life. Try it all. Do everything. Take that phone call. Buy those shoes. Take that trip. Just do what you need to do because in that path and through that journey, it'll come to you and you'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm. You only live once. I got to tell you that is something that we all have to realize. But breathing is so important, and giving ourselves the credit and having the patience that we all need. I want to say thank you now to all of our panelists, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you all over the last 2 days. We sure hope that the event is just the beginning of this conversation and this time together. In order to continue to inspire and empower one another, we have started a Game Changers network on LinkedIn, and Game Change, GAMECHANGERS, Game Changers network on LinkedIn, and we encourage you to join us. You can scan the QR code on your screen now to take you directly to the group, or search Game Changers Network by the Orlando Magic on LinkedIn. We hope to see you there. Once again, my name is Monica May. Shelly Wilkes, thank you so much for all of the questions on Slido. Thank you for everyone who pitched in today. We're now going to take a short break before our final panel of the Game Changer Empowerment and Leadership Summit. The Playmakers panel is coming up next, and that's going to be moderated by Kathy Francis. Ladies, have a fantastic day, and thank you so much for all of your input and just being who you are. Thank you. God bless.
Welcome back for our final session of the Game Changers Empowerment and Leadership Summit presented by Zymoprint. If you weren't here for the first session, I'm Shelley Wilkes, the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Social Responsibility for the Orlando Magic, and I just want to thank you all for tuning in for this session. The Playmaker panel, which is our panel right now, features women executives from professional sports organizations across Florida who will share their unique journeys within the sports industry, their wisdom that they've learned along the way. I'm going to go ahead and introduce all of our panelists, and then I'll turn it over to our moderator. First up, we have Becky Bonner, our Director of Player Development and Basketball Operations with the Orlando Magic. Welcome.
Thank you.
Joining us from the West Coast after a big Magic win last night. Lorianne Diaz, the Vice President of Business Communications and Social Responsibility with the Miami Heat. And sorry, Lorianne, I didn't check in on the Heat situation. You can give everyone that update. I'm a homer. And then Kristen Amway, the Vice President of Human Resources of the recently crowned Super Bowl champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Kay Rollins, the founder and SVP of Community Relations for Orlando City and the President of the Orlando City Foundation. And I believe the Orlando Pride are kicking off here today or tomorrow, very soon. So we're very excited about that. And then Roxanne Ribicoff, the president of One Daytona. Our moderator today is Kathy Francis, the president of Oasis Sports Ventures and chair and president of WISE, which is Women in Sports and Events. Kathy's experience in the sports industry ranges from a marketing executive with MLB, New Jersey Sports and Exposition Authority, where she was charged with attracting entertainment and revenue-generating opportunities for multiple venues, and the USTA, where she led initiatives to grow tennis participation nationally. She has now founded her own company, Oasis Sports Ventures, to provide quality amateur sports programs and competitions, and has been a key moderator for Women's History Month for multiple panels and has more to do today. So we are so thankful for you being with us, and thank you for leading this discussion. I'll turn it over to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Shelley. And I'm not doing any of the stuff that my bio says in terms of Oasis Sports, but that's another story for another day. It's great to meet all of you, and as Shelley mentioned, this is really to be about your professional journey, about where your unique points of entry and what you've learned along the way. But we hope the outtakes for the people listening is that there is no one way into sport. There are numerous roads that lead into this pretty amazing industry. And your backgrounds, by the very nature of all of you being here, reflect that, right? So, we've got some of you starting from the ground level, coming in from your college experience right into sport, and those transitioning from other industries into it. So I'm going to start with the transitions. So that would be Kay, Kristen, and to a slightly lesser extent, Roxanne, but I'll put you in that mix. And Kay, I'm going to jump right to you. Your LinkedIn profile, if you're like me, you don't update it much, but don't follow that advice, first off. Teaching coordinator, right, with degrees in psychology. You had a very entrepreneurial spirit. You started 2 preschools in your home country. How the heck did you end up here, as a founder of an MLS team? What are the associated skills and what brought you here?
Gosh, that's a big question. Yeah, I'm actually on my 3rd career. So I started out in banking, actually. Then had kids, found out I was a pretty good teacher. So I actually went to college at 31, got a degree, ended up owning and running 2 preschools. And then in 2004, got an opportunity to go to America. That's a whole nother story we won't go into right now. And while we were in Austin, Texas, had a team in England that we had an association with ask us to find an affiliate. And we couldn't really find what we thought they were looking for. So we said, why don't we just start a team? And so I know that makes it sound very simple. And I promise you, it was a ton of hard work and working, 365 days of the year. but for me, it was an opportunity to combine two passions. One is soccer. When you grow up in England, is the sport, everyone plays it, every little town has a team. And then my passion for the community. And I think, sports teams have this very unique platform to help make change and make an impact in their community. So it was just a great opportunity. Didn't work out in Austin, so we moved, lock, stock, barrel, team, coach, everyone, and we ended up in Orlando. And Orlando's been amazing to us, welcoming, warm, people opening their doors to us. So many of the teams represented here being allies and being helpful. So I'm glad to be here.
And your entrepreneurial spirit, right? Starting preschool, starting a professional sports team, but also this notion that you worked with kids and you're in the community now and connecting those kids to the sport itself. Do you see that as just sort of a natural transition?
I do. I think one of the things we've tried to be is a good neighbor. Mm-hmm. Obviously in what has been an underserved area of Orlando. And so one of our big pieces has been always being a good neighbor, reaching out to the community around us to help in any way we can. And what that does is when times are tough, and all teams go through tough times, when they're not winning on the field, I think your activities off the field, the way you are perceived as a team that has a sense of social conscience, stand you in good stead, and it keeps your fans loyal and attached to you because you're still reaching out and you're still out there in the community, no matter what's been going on the field.
Right. So Kristen, you transitioned from a media company to sports, but you were in that HR function. Yeah. I know that Shelley already mentioned the Super Bowl championship. But I elected not to put my Saints mask on.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
For you. But by all accounts, this function is relatively new to sports. I mean, when you talk about all of the different roles that we have in our industry, probably in the past 25 years has HR been professionalized in a way. So as you transition from the media company into sport, what would you say were some of your biggest aha moments and what you brought to the table for the team?
Yeah, and to add to that, I believe strongly actually from my conversations when I was hired, they were actually looking for someone outside of sports who could bring that perspective and bring more, that seat at the table and to have conversations about how human resources can really positively impact an organization. So it was, I'll just share with you, this is my funniest story. I actually applied to a blind ad. So the way I got into sports was not a normal story. I think a lot of people were applying that maybe weren't qualified. And so the ad said looking for a human resources executive to work for a very well-known family-owned business. So took a few interviews before I realized that's how and who I applied to, but very grateful to be here. So, the fundamentals of human resources, the same, very transferable, everything, you do the same. The difference was really that family atmosphere that you get with working in sports. I can't even describe it except for when I first started, I thought everyone was just being nice to me because I was the head of HR. And then that wore off after a while, I became Kristen and it's just everyone truly cares about one another. There's just this family feeling and, that's been the biggest difference. And really, it sounds weird. I had to adjust to that because I was in such a corporate world where we followed the policies and, and everything was by the book where there's a little more flexibility.
Yeah. And from a media company, that's round the clock, right?
Yeah.
But, there are unique things. And, when we get to Becky talking about the role that she plays and then the scouting world, what were some of the positions that you found that, oh my gosh, how do I manage the needs and the benefits of this group of people?
In sports?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I ever felt like that.
Okay.
It's always a challenge, and I guess, working in media was hard. You're putting out a daily newspaper. I enjoyed it so much. I spent 20 plus years of my career there. I honestly thought coming into sports was going to kind of be my cruise into retirement. Like, how hard can it be? You put in 10 home games. Never worked harder, but I love it. I wouldn't do it any differently, but it's absolutely a grind, but it's a good grind. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Roxanne, you transitioned from one of the largest shopping mall operators to a retailtainment, if that's a proper way of phrasing it. But along the way, you made a stop to run a ISC track, right? Do I have that correct?
So that's part of my merger story. So I actually was brought on by ISC, International Speedway Corp, to be the general manager of their new entertainment and lifestyle complex, which is across the street from Daytona International Speedway, and meant to be very complimentary for event fans, while also serving the 365 local consumer. And then about, 9 to 10 months in, they said, we're going to merge. We're going to be one company. So we're all in the same building. It's funny because it doesn't really feel any different other than we just became closer, I think, as a family, a NASCAR family. But I originally was brought in as ISC. Now we're owned by NASCAR, and it's been a wonderful transition. So I actually have a funny story of my own about finding this job. So I was working for General Growth Properties, and they were one of the largest REITs in the United States. And they own malls around the United States. And I was looking to move back home to be closer to family and friends because I'm from the Central Florida area. And I was over visiting with one of my friends one weekend, and we had a little girls' night, and we came out to this brand new complex called One Daytona. They have this fantastic luxury movie theater. And so my girlfriend said, we gotta go check it out and go watch a movie over there. And as we were driving to the complex, one of my girlfriends said, wouldn't it be funny if they had a job open for a general manager and you could move back home? And I said, that would be funny. Absolutely. And then lo and behold, about 2 weeks later, I was looking at job postings, and there it was. I couldn't believe it. It was meant to be, I guess.
For those listening, watching, Roxanne and Kristen's stories are not normal. But it is exciting to know that as you're exploring, and sometimes you put it out there and it comes to you. I'm going to come back to you, Roxanne, but I want to go to our traditional points of entry, folks, in terms of Lorianne and Becky. Lorianne, you started from your college career, you came right into an entry-level position, and you've sort of progressed through to your current role, your vice president position now. But you have degrees in sociology, English, and journalism. So how have you brought those things? See, Becky sort of shaking her head a little bit. But how have you brought those pieces together, and how has that impacted your journey through the system?
I have to correct you though, Kathy. I don't have a sociology degree. I studied it. It started out as a major at a point, and then I switched. What I always wanted to be was a journalist because I'm a writer at heart. But I have to tell you that when I talk to college students, they always kind of snicker when they ask me what I studied in my undergrad, because I say English, because California State Los Angeles didn't have a journalism program back in the day. So the next best thing was getting a literature degree. Mm-hmm. And it was the best and easiest degree because I just read books and wrote papers on them, which I found to be really enjoyable. But they snicker at me when I say, I have an English degree, because they look at me and they ask, well, what the heck do you do with an English degree? And I say, I actually use my degree every single day because I have to write a lot. I have to write promotional copy. I have to write press releases. you know, every day for our organization. So I use my major every day, and I think that that makes sense when I explain it to them that way. But my entry also into the sports world wasn't necessarily linear. In my 20s, I had wanderlust, so I kind of bounced around the United States a little bit and ended up in Los Angeles. And I answered an ad too. It wasn't a blind ad, but it was an ad. Back in the late 90s, the Clippers were looking to hire a marketing assistant. And I thought, well, that sounds like fun. Why not? So I show up at the old LA Arena. This is in 1998, because that's how you looked for a job in the late 90s, in the very, very early years of the internet.
Right.
So I show up there, and there are about
You're aging yourself, Lori.
I know. It is what it is. It is young at heart. That job almost didn't happen, because when I sat in the lobby, I noticed 5 or 6 other people sitting there, and I thought, wonder if they're interviewing for multiple jobs. And lo and behold, I figured out that when someone came out of, you know, a back room somewhere to welcome us all, we were interviewing like as a panel of candidates. And I was so not prepared for that, and I freaked out. And I remember having a moment of, I'm just going to walk out of here. And I said, no, Lorianne, this is a challenge. You're going to sit and go through with it. And I'm glad I did, because who knows how my career trajectory might have changed had I not stayed. But I got that job, and I worked for the Clippers back in the first lockout, which was 98, 99. And you know, the rest is history. Here I am, 22 seasons later. I'm aging myself.
So what do you think it was that set you apart from the other people in that room, that you got that job? Because again, folks, this is not normal, you know, in terms of, you know, the group interview. You might have multiple people interviewing you, but never multiple candidates on the same time table with you. What do you think was the unique part about you that got you the job?
I think I tried to give clever and memorable answers to those questions. That was a long time ago, so I can't even tell you what the heck they asked us. But I just tried to be honest and forthright and myself. And I think that my personality shined through. And I think later on, my then boss, after I had gotten hired a couple of months into my employment, told me there were about 200 applicants. So I took that as a real feather in my cap. Wow, I beat out with zero experience in sports, by the way, I might add. I beat out, you know, 200 or 199 other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you, the comment you made about youth, the young people and English, do you think that has a lot to do with today, that there's a generation of us who really just don't know how to write and how to post, but we don't necessarily know how to write and really form, you know, press releases and all the things that you're doing? Is that a concern?
Oh God, yes. I mean, complete sentences and not the text talk. I just can't pick up my phone and write your Y-O-U apostrophe R-E as you are. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. And in the world, I guess, of Twitter and snippets and sound bites, it's easier for people to abbreviate all sorts of things. But those of us who have a real love of language, I think, you know, inside we're cringing.
Right. Well, I'm guilty of the you are, but I promise to spell it out when I text you. Becky, best for last in this round. There's logic to your pathway, right? You played basketball in college, you played internationally. You know, did you ever think at the time you were playing that you would have the opportunity to come into the business of sport and in the role that you currently have on the operations side? Because let's be honest, it's not something, we're seeing more of it, obviously, but we've got a long way to go. You know, what's your journey like, and what were your feelings around this, achieving this success?
Sure. I mean, first of all, it's been really great to be here with you all and hear your stories. They're incredible. And, you know, for me, I have 2 brothers. I'm the middle, older and younger. And I was the kid that, like, if my older brother had this much milk in his cereal, I had to have the same amount of milk poured, and it had to be like, I was like eyeing everything. And so as we grew up, that's kind of how I was. And so he was playing sports. I'll play sports. And that kind of also went into education and life after college. So, I went and job shadowed on Wall Street for a week, and I was like, I don't know about that. So, and then I worked after I stopped playing, I ran Bonner camp, basketball camp, and created a camp in our town, and got to meet with my older brother's college coach at an event where the men's champion was there and the women's champion was there. And so I got to meet the women's champion, which at the time was Maryland, Brenda Fries. And so we were just talking, and I was like, oh, I would love to work for you. That would be awesome. And she's like, well, we don't have any openings. Thanks, And I was like, all right. So then she actually remembered that. And later on, she had an opening. She was in a bind. Someone had a family emergency and had to relocate back to their hometown. And I just stepped up and was able to fill in and relocate down to Maryland. And that was, trial by fire, kind of like I was a player and I didn't know all the, I showed up for practice every day and it seemed like, okay, we're here. I didn't know all the things that went into it that all of you do and the hard work that you guys do. And then I learned everything from, I always say, I was setting up the hoops. I helped with the budget, team travel, doing the laundry, the equipment, managing buses or passenger vans, troubleshooting disasters and managing people and personalities, and doing scouts. And so it was a really great opportunity to learn all aspects of things. And then, after a season, one of our coaches got a job at Louisville as a head coach, and I was his first hire. And he said, have you ever been to Louisville? And I said, no. I said, well, get in the car, we're going. I just became the head coach. And he's like, just follow me. And I was on his bumper the entire drive from Maryland to Louisville. And I showed up and he introduced me at his press conference as his third assistant. And I was like, oh, I'm okay. You never mentioned that to me prior, but okay, let's go. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's do this. And so, obviously I was cheering for them yesterday. But it was just we started from scratch, it felt like, to build a program that they have today. And I'm very proud of that. And then after a while, I'm a little salty towards the NCAA, but we don't need to get into that. Timely events that you all know, the whole world knows about, those were happening then. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, I don't know if I can do college sports anymore. And I was very fortunate to get on with the NBA League office and work there for 6 years, and simultaneously also work with USA Basketball on the men's side for a Olympic quad. And after doing USA Basketball, I fell in love with the team stuff again, and I got an itch to be around a team. But I also started looking around at people that I've known forever, men I've known and worked with forever, get all these crazy good jobs with all this running teams. And I was like, well, if he can do it, I could do it too. And I started to think, well, maybe I should do that. And I shadowed every time the GM of Cleveland was in New York City. I met him and I went to the early pregame for the Knicks and the Nets, or if there was a college event, and I just sat with him and was like, what are you doing? What is scouting? What is that? I know what it is on the women's side. What does it look like here? And so I was practicing for anything that would happen in the future. And it just happened to work out that. Jeff got the Orlando job, and I had worked with his old boss, Masai Ujiri, through Basketball Without Borders and all this stuff on the continent of Africa. And I think my message to everyone would be, you never know who's watching you. And so if you work hard and you treat people the right way, some people could notice you. And it might not happen immediately, but he remembered how I was to him maybe years ago. And he always had me in the back of his list of people to recommend. And so he recommended me to Jeff. And Jeff called me and was like, you want to come to Orlando? And I said, to visit? What are we talking about here? And so he just, it all kind of happened very quickly. and you know, it's been great. And it's been like everything else. You just learn as you go, and you work hard, and you treat people the right way, and you do your best. And that's kind of the way it went for me.
Right. There's so many things I can ask you. It sounds like Matt was the original Mike, to be like Matt. Campaign. He followed everything he did. But I'm going to come back to you in a second. But I want to pick up on a thread that you said around women and sort of the parity issue, right? And you know, as we sit here in this everything is about DE and I, right? And you know, how intentional are we as organizations being around that? Do you guys feel, you know, I can go to you, Kristen, on this, but I want to open it up to everyone. Do you feel as though we're in a moment in time, or is this a true movement that women, because on any given day, I'll answer that question differently. I might say movement, and then the NC2A issue comes up, and I go, oh, I think there's a moment. You know, so how do you guys feel about what is happening for women in this industry? Kristen, is there anything you guys are doing in particular around this?
Yeah, I mean, just to give a little history to those who may not know, but in 2019, we did hire 2 female coaches, and we were the first in the NFL to do that. And as a result of that, thank you, we were the first team to have 2 female coaches on a Super Bowl team. So really, really wonderful accomplishments. But in addition to, you know, we have other positions. We have scouts. We have the director of football research, our nutritionist, our chef, and we don't seek out females. I'm going to be very clear about that, but we do seek out female candidates, and our pool is constantly full. And to the earlier point,
Kristen, is that the answer that people? Because whenever we say we're being very intentional about hiring women, people go, great, so you're not looking at anybody else. What you're saying is that no, we're being very intentional about opening up the funnel and putting women in the mix, and doing that, women just have just as often a chance to get the roles. That sounds like what you're saying.
It is exactly what I'm saying, and the math works. You know, you fill your candidate pool with talented, smart women. 50% of our vice presidents are women here. I've been here for 8, going on my 9th season. We've never once said we need to go find a female, right? We absolutely ensure that we have female candidates in our final candidate pool, not just our pool. So, but we are very intentional about that. We are constantly, we had interns recently, half of the interns we hired were female. We promoted 27 individuals in 2019, and we'll talk about 2020 because that just doesn't count. Right. But in 2019, half of those that we promoted were female. 2 were promoted into director roles. Half of those were, half the managers were female. So we're just constantly building our pool of very, very talented women. The math just happens. You're going to hire them. So you have to be open to it, right? And obviously, if you've heard our coach speak, you know, he's awesome, amazing. He was very, you know, open. You have to be open to hiring females first and foremost, and knowing. I mean, our defensive line coach is a female. That is just so cool, right? And our strength and conditioning coach, she's telling them how to lift a weight, is a female. So they're not your typical female roles by any means. And I think, is it a move? I hope that young ladies see that these opportunities are there, and that, yeah, you have, listen, it is not easy. And I know our story sounded like we fell into this, but I will tell you, when I am recruiting, which is we're constantly recruiting, when we have internships, we have over 200-300 people apply for one position. So it's intentional for us, but it needs to be intentional by you as well. You need to be out there networking. You need to be, and not asking favors of me when you call me for the first time. You know, like, not what can I do for you? Like, let's build a connection. It takes time, and that connection needs and should be built long before the opening happening, because 100% the people that I've hired, my recruiter actually, I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, "Why haven't you applied for this position I have open?" Because in the back of my mind, I knew that she was great, and I didn't think that I was qualified, and but I always have people in the back of my mind who I'm going to be looking to hire. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does, because you're saying representation matters in a different way. We got to have representation in the pool of candidates as well, in addition to, seeing other women in the role, seeing a Becky in the role. I mean, the only thing that gave me comfort that you won the Super Bowl was that you had women in those roles.
You'll be okay.
Clearly, I have PTSD, right? But hey, when you look at what recently happened with the NC2A, you're in an organization that's got men's and women's. How are you dealing with the parity of those experiences, that the women have the exact same opportunities as the men, the exact same resources and equipment, as, to be very specific, equipment as the men?
I mean, obviously, I'm in a unique position of having those two teams, and anybody who knows our Orlando Pride team know that there are some very vocal advocates in that group, and it is a constant fight, and a lot of it is around just the lack of investment that there is in the women's game in general. And also the coverage that we get, it's subpar. When you see a men's game and they have all the replays and the angles and everything else, right, it's even more exciting maybe than it even was. But with the women's, you're lucky if you get a replay sometimes. And so it doesn't give that credence and that notability, if you like, because we're not getting that investment. And then there's all the, news companies and everyone, they need to take a look at and sit down and look at how they do cover women's sports. I mean, we've all seen those ridiculous interview questions. One of the tennis players getting asked to do a twirl. Would you ever ask, Roger Federer to do a twirl? No, you wouldn't. And so there's not a focus on the athleticism of the players. It's all around how feminine and attractive they are. And that has to go away. And we have to get our male allies to help us in this. This is something they have to think about and take a look at what they do. There's a whole, if you go online, you can look up, there's a whole video of hockey players, female hockey players, and some of the stupid questions they get. There's one of Serena Williams. She's just lost in the semifinal, and one of the reporters says, "Why aren't you smiling?"
Right.
I mean, what? I just lost. That's why I'm not smiling. So I think I think we're in a good moment, and I do think there is a push. I'm on Clubhouse quite a lot, and there are tons of amazing, inspiring young women talking on there about being in sports and about some of the ideas and things they want to do. We've got a new team coming in next year into the NWSL called Angel City. Mm-hmm. A lot of very prominent, not just sports athletes, but also in the entertainment world. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to change the dynamic and maybe make people pick things up a little bit and really take more notice.
Right. But you said something interesting. I apologize for interrupting you. You said something interesting about which I take as the fan experience, right? When you're seated at home watching the game and seeing all the different angles and all, it's sort of interesting. Women's soccer has been bigger than men's soccer in this country for years, right? But when we are not giving the best experience for the fan, then they do turn off, right? And go, well, this is kind of boring. When it really isn't. We just aren't expressing it in a way that you can relate because you've seen it in the men's game, right?
Right, and we have to stop being cyclical. Every 4 years the country goes crazy when the US women are in the World Cup. Right. And in between, it's crickets. And so there has to be more consistent coverage. and just better coverage, more quality coverage, because then people will start to take it seriously and will want to watch.
Right. So I'm gonna do like Lori and date myself. Roxanne, when I came into sports back in the very early 90s, I'll just call it the 90s, most women had come in through the licensing business, right, which was really more about the merchandising side of the game, and they would have had sort of this retail background to come in, and that was really where, if not for the media dollars, the revenue was coming in through that space. As you look at your business from a retailtainment, and I've spent some time there. I haven't been to a race, but I've been to your facility, and it's a phenomenal facility. You should kind of want to hang out. Yeah, right. Where do you see the opportunities for women? Are you seeing more women coming in different, because clearly Daytona or NASCAR isn't as a sport that has a lot of women, when that is not necessarily the case, right?
Yeah. So, my industry has grown quite a bit. When I worked at the REIT, when I first started, it just seemed like there weren't as many women in the senior positions or asset managers. Definitely heavy on the marketing directing side, right? And so events and advertising and promotions, but not as many on asset management. And I actually myself started in marketing, and I love marketing, but I really saw myself more as an asset manager. And I remember having a conversation with someone in the leadership team saying, this is a program I would love to grow into. And I was told that they didn't really see me as that, my marketing background, and they felt like that was kind of the right place for me. So interesting enough,
for the audience, describe asset management. Tell the group what that is.
So most of the time they're called general managers. And so they are someone who manages the entire property. So it is like managing an entire company or business in its entirety. So actually the handling of everything from the day-to-day operations to financials to overseeing the marketing program, the leasing program, everything. So it's a big job. It certainly is not easy. But yeah, and it's funny because over a few years, we started seeing more and more women show up as asset managers. And then all of a sudden I get a phone call one day saying, I think we see you as an asset manager. So it took a little time for them, I think, to catch up. But now I'm seeing it more and more. And I'm very fortunate that in the NASCAR organization, and I can't speak for the racing side, but our leadership in NASCAR, we've got Lisa France Kennedy at the helm, and she's such a proponent for women and growth. And she's been such a great partner to me. I'm carrying out her vision here at One Daytona, this fiscal vision. So, we have a lot of encouragement here in the organization for women to really grow and be at the table and have a seat and a voice at the table. And I think that's really, really important.
And you're an asset manager, it could be a venue manager, so general manager in an arena, right? Because you essentially are running these businesses there. What's the skill set that women aren't speaking about, right? So if you said you came from a marketing background, if you convinced someone that you could do it, what did you do around your skills to prove that I can talk business acumen, I can talk finance, I can talk strategy? How did you approach that?
So I inserted myself into a lot of places. Sometimes you are your best advocate, right? And so there was a lot of times where it wasn't necessarily a marketing activity, but I said, I'd really like to be a part of this. I would like to learn more about this side of the business. And I was very, very fortunate. I had a great boss at the time who was all for it. Anything I wanted to do, anywhere I wanted to be, he was for it. And so I learned a lot. I had to prove that I was strategic. I think that was the biggest thing. When you're running a company, you're running a business, you have to be strategic. You can't just make decisions on the fly. There's got to be not only experience behind those decisions, but a lot of thought, right? You've got to have a plan. And once I was able to prove that I was capable of being strategic, and I had a basis of experience, and some of the leadership in my last organization saw that I was definitely capable of doing that, that gave them the confidence. But yeah, I would admit that it took me a little bit longer than some of my counterparts that were not female.
Right. So it becomes a bit of a cultural thing. Becky, I come back to you. You talked about Masai, Masai being with the Raptors now, and they win the championship, and he takes a picture with all the women who are on the operations side of the business, right? So it's like, whoa, there's a lot of women in there with the X's and O's.
He's a smart man.
Yeah, he's a very smart man, according to our group here. But you also said, before that when you got into it, there's logic that people, and I started off this way, going, okay, you play basketball and now you're in this role. Seems like, sure, she can do that. But you said your eyes were open to what you didn't know, being a player versus now the X's and O's and building the business. How has that, or let me ask the question differently. What would you say to a young woman who has a similar background or not about how they can come into this space, and what is the skill set that they need to be drawing upon or looking to enhance?
I would say, first of all, my whole mentality around this is service-based, meaning I serve the game. I have love of the game. The game has shown me the world. It's paid for my education. It's paid my bills. It's done my family's life with my brother, right? Absolutely changed our lives. And so as a person that's very passionate about the sport, the approach is just serving the game. And so when I start from there, I have a high care factor, right? And so I would say for me, this is such a big time commitment, being a part of a basketball operations staff, that it's not like a 9 to 5. It's more of a lifestyle, and so everything kind of a part of it fits together, and you make it like the people that care about you and your life understand that this is the way it goes, and so everything kind of navigates itself that way. And so if you want to have a toe in this industry, I would say that would be a little bit challenging because it is such a big commitment and a necessary commitment to be successful. And I just wanted to mention something I thought I heard someone say earlier, but one of the things that has helped me the most, I think, is you could call it allyship, but also the art of the cosign, meaning like on a daily basis or even like bigger to get an interview or a job. But I remember being at USA Basketball and watching a very famous player shooting, and he didn't have a rebounder, and it was bothering me because there were like 400 people in the gym. So I just put my laptop down and started rebounding for him. And then the next day of the training camp, she's like, oh yeah, Beck's gonna rebound for me. And so then I got co-signed by him. And then through and through, our coaching staff, like I always say, they didn't, similar to Roxanne, no one invited me to be in a space or a meeting. I was just there, and no one asked me to leave. And then I moved a little closer and a little closer. And so then all those people were like, Becky's with us. And so it's hard to navigate boundaries and all of that in spaces where you aren't necessarily welcome. But if you take the right approach, or if you even try and maybe it didn't work out in one way, but don't think of that as a closed door. Just evaluate, self-reflect, and figure out how you can do better the next time and get through. But it's a very persistent skill.
Yeah, they say if you don't want to work on Sundays, don't work in professional sports, work in college sports, right? That if you don't want to work 365, 24/7, don't be in operations, right? And recruiting and all that. Lorianne, I saw you nod your head as Becky was talking. It's very much sort of a cultural thing, but it's this, while we can talk about DE&I, it is about this sense of belonging. And so if you don't put yourself in the space, they don't think you belong, right? And if you put yourself and they start to see you, or whether they realize what you're doing there or not, you are kind of forcing yourself into the position. But why were you nodding your head so much when Becky was talking?
When Becky was talking, I was nodding my head because I'm thinking of my work husband, who is our CMO, and my boss, Michael McCullough. One of my longest relationships, I might add, going on 25 years. And just, I mean, when you day in and day out, year in and year out, work side by side with someone, you can't help but to get close to them, not just professionally but personally. And we talk about allies, and we need male allies, obviously, especially in our industry, and we also need courage, I think. Some of my colleagues call me the Michael Whisperer, because I will fly things up the flagpole and bring up issues that everyone else is too afraid to mention. You know, I try in my diplomatic way to speak to power, you know, which is always respectful, obviously, because I need my job, I have a mortgage to pay. But someone has to take the step forward with uncomfortable issues and bring them to the fore. And I am so blessed and so grateful that I've developed that kind of a rapport with him. And through the years, whenever there's a difficult conversation that has to take place like that, I always start it with the same phrase. I say, "You trust me, right? You know that I have your back, right?" And he knows that's a signal now. Something, you know, Lorianne's gonna throw a curveball at me right now. But it's also not just about me. It's kind of bigger picture things in our industry and in our organization. But it's had ripple effects. And I encourage like the next generation of young people, and especially women, like, speak truth to power and stand in your truth, because that's the only way that we are going to make change happen.
Yeah, you kind of winked that out with your T-shirt. It's a great T-shirt. We have about 12 minutes left, and I know we're gonna take some questions. And so while people are maybe thinking, I'll continue asking some questions. But you guys are all kind of alluding to culture too, right? The culture of an organization. You're talking about male allyship, but and anyone can take this one on. And it'll be a two-parter. There's how do we change the culture inside of our organization? But what also is the role of women? What is our role that to support other women and to make sure that the representation is there? So who wants to take that? Otherwise, I'm just going to pick you. Roxanne, okay.
All right. Yes. Actually, culture is my thing. So my last organization, once I moved up into asset management, I became what they call me culture queen. I adore culture. I think it is the backbone of a company. I think you should not only have a good culture, but you should live it every day. And I think the leadership should absolutely do that. And so to me, I feel like having more representation, female representation at the table in those leadership positions, and as part of developing the company culture, is very, very important. And then what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
The role of women in
women, yeah.
Supporting other women.
I mentioned a little bit when I was chatting about kind of being an advocate for yourself. Absolutely. I think you should figure out what you want out of that organization, and then you should become an advocate for yourself. You should go out, you should rally for yourself. You should get that experience. If they're not going to let you get it, you got to figure out a way to do it. And then sometimes it also means, and I've had some organizations where it just didn't work out, and that's okay too, right? Not every organization is going to be a great fit for you, and vice versa. So I think really understanding, is this a place that is going to be encouraging of what I want to do? Do they share some of the same values? Is this the right work environment for me? And if the answer is yes, and you've got a great leadership team that you trust, then, you know, go out and be an advocate for yourself. Fight for what you want in the company and what's right. Have a voice. And I think what Lorianne said was really, really impactful. I feel like I do it too here. I'm the person who's always bringing up the topics that people don't necessarily want to talk about or are a little bit uncomfortable. But I think think women tend to do that, right? I don't know. I feel like that might also be a bit of a female trait where it's like, we don't want to sweep them through. We want to talk about this. And so having those hard conversations is very, very important. And I think it's a role that we play and that we should continue to play.
I was going to say, I would add in as well is lifting up other women. We've all talked about this. I was on a call the other week, I can't remember who said it, but she talked about going into a big meeting and knowing that there was a younger female counterpart who was a little nervous and whatever, and actually saving a seat in the middle of the table kind of thing, rather than and saying, hey, I saved your seat, come sit here. And, you know, giving them that invitation and that little bit of extra confidence that, okay, I'm sitting by her, I know this is going to be okay, and she's going to help me through this. And I think, you know, I'm very fortunate, and I'm definitely an age in my life where I can afford the time and the whatever to give back. And so when people find you on LinkedIn or I mean, I've had people on Clubhouse contacting me about things, take the time. I mean, it's especially at the moment when you can do this, you haven't even got to get in your car. You can spend half an hour on a call and really encourage and help someone who wants to be one day where you are. And it really is, it's a investment of time, but I think it's a great investment to make.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just going to add one real quick, and when we say lift up, I know it helped me professionally, and I try to do it as often as I can, is when there's an opportunity to present to the senior executives, let's say, instead of us presenting, we know we can, giving that opportunity to someone else so that they can, you know, that's physically almost lifting them up, and it really provides an opportunity for them to shine. And I know for me personally, my growth in my profession happened from people doing that for me.
Yeah, Becky, you wanted to say something? I saw you kind of.
I was just going to say, just having the same learning curve and opportunity to make a mistake or grow and develop is really crucial for women, in my opinion, because there's not a lot of you there, that there's just maybe this pressure that maybe you put on yourself. Maybe I'm guilty of that. Of like, I have to be the best and extra perfect and the most well-rounded and involved because I'm here, and I don't want my male counterparts to think that I can't make a mistake. And so normalizing to them who are not used to being around in a working relationship with women from their past is just understanding like the human factor that we also cannot know something or make a mistake. Right. And that's a part of our growth and development, just like it's a part of my male counterparts' growth and development.
Right, and there are 1,000 questions I can ask you guys based on those comments, but there's one that really ties to, Becky, what you were just saying that came in from the audience. What has been a failure that you have experienced, and what did you learn that has really helped you in your career now? Any one of you can take that. Laura, do you want to take that one?
Sure. The story is too long, and I know we're running out of time, so I'll just say top line. I remember that the highest ranking woman at the Heat, who's our in-house counsel, Raquel Livman, gave me some very friendly advice. She basically told me I was too hot-headed and too temperamental, which is absolutely true. Many years ago, by the way. This is many, many years ago. And she said it lovingly, and it came from a place of support. But she said, you know, it's not going to serve you, you know, either here at the Heat, or if you leave the Heat, wherever you go afterward, you have to rein in your emotions. You have to just stop and not react, and think about what you want to say or how you want to react, but don't just react. And I tell this story, you know, ad nauseum. It turned out to be the most useful advice, and I had to be vigilant about that because I can be temperamental and hot-headed. That's kind of who I am. But it served me very well, and I thank her often.
Yeah, you know, look, there was a generation of us who at one point felt like we needed to be more like the men to succeed. You know, whether that was the edge and aggressiveness that came to the table that just isn't accepted from women, right? But that advice that you got was someone who basically said to you, kind of, let's let's use the skill that women come by naturally, sort of that empathy, that understanding, that democratizing of language, to be successful. The last question I'll ask all of you, and we've got 4 minutes, and I know, Kay, you got a hard stop, so hopefully you guys can do this quickly. What would you tell your younger self? Lori, we may already know that answer for you, but Kristen, let's start with you.
Gosh, I don't, probably all the advice that I'm hearing today, you know, I think it's interesting. When I worked in the media, and I didn't see myself as a female working at a male. And maybe it's because, again, I grew up with brothers, so, you know, I fit in. But, you know, my career path and the best advice I got, and so I'm glad this person told me. So instead of me telling me, it actually got told, was have a plan. Have a plan. And he showed me his plan, and it was like, oh my gosh, it was all on paper. And like, so I just knew I wanted to be the head of HR. I tried to really simplify it. And I just continuously got feedback and knew where my gaps were and got educated around it, and, you know, worked with people who could. So I always knew where I wanted to go, and I just did whatever I could to get there in terms of those skill sets.
Yeah, Kristen, I have 4 brothers and a younger sister. The girls worked in sports, the boys did not.
Yeah.
Roxanne, best younger self or advice?
Give yourself more grace. So I often give more grace to others than I do myself, and it's something I work really, really hard on as I grow in my career. But similar to what someone else said, you know, being very hard on yourself, and just having to, you know, overcome the fact that you're not perfect. We're all humans, we make mistakes, and quite honestly, some of your failures lead to some really important lessons that help teach you for the rest of your career. So give yourself some grace. It's okay, you're gonna get there.
Yeah. Becky, since she picked up on your thread, and we got 60 seconds left before we kick it back to Shelley.
I would just add that the grace comment is something I would tell myself as well, but also to be fine, be you, be however you are in your own skin is who you are. And so don't try to adapt and be to the situation. It's okay if you're a little unique in that moment.
Okay. Lori, anything differently? Hothead? What?
I just read it. First you learn, then you earn. First you learn, then you earn.
That's a good one.
You spend a lot of time like chasing after the almighty dollar, and so much happens in between. Like, the money will come. Enjoy what you do, the money will come.
That's a great one. Kay, can you beat that?
No. I think be in the moment and enjoy. You know, take a minute and breathe. I think with the club, especially as it was growing and we were working such crazy long hours, I think the day that we kicked off in MLS and we had 62,500 people in the Citrus Bowl, it was really to kind of take a breath and enjoy that day, and like, look, we did it, we made it. You know, celebrate your successes, big and small, all the way along your career.
Awesome. Well, it has been my pleasure to have this conversation with all of you. I learned quite a bit. I'm glad I didn't have to answer some of these questions. But I thank you guys for having me, and thank you for being here. Shelley, back to you.
Thank you, Kathy, for leading us through that conversation. So many great nuggets of advice there from the group, and we really appreciate you all being here. And now I know a group of women I can call on when I need advice. So we really appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. And for everyone watching, we really just hope this is the beginning of the conversation. We have started a Game Changers network on LinkedIn, and we would love for you to join to encourage and lift up one another on the ongoing basis. There's a QR code that will be up on your screen. You can scan that to take you directly to the group to join, and we will meet you there and hope to continue this. Thank you again for all of our attendees and panelists over the past 2 days for walking with us through this journey of Women's History Month with our inaugural event. And we hope to see you again very, very soon. Thanks again and have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.